Ladies and gentlemen, it appears that the marketing team over at Kuro Games does not give a flying hell about the United States or any of its holidays, because on Thanksgiving Day 2025, it appears that there is another set of drip marketing available for us for version 3.0. And I'm not gonna lie, it's perhaps one of the most exciting blends yet, because I've been able to take a look at some of the details, been able to see a little bit about what's in this lineup, and I'm gonna be real, all of the theories that I thought about when it comes to Startorch Academy, Lahai-Roi, all of that, its cast of playable characters, it appears it's all very true. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead, let's go and take a look at Mornye, who has, well, announced her arrival on the second half banner of version 3.0. So, just taking a look at this, we've got the post-lament Anthropocene stars intertwined. We're going to go ahead and start with that one and kind of just go along sequentially. It's because we see the stars that humanity imagines what lies beyond the sky. So you can see over here that Mornye is one of those characters that is really fascinated about the future, is fascinated about the great beyond, and is one of the more forward-looking members, I would say, when it comes to the playable cast that we have right now. A lot of the people, they're thinking about the problems in the present, you know, the Leviathan, Jinzhou, all of the issues, the Thenodians, all of that. But it doesn't seem to really be a concern for anybody that's in the Lahai-Roi region in this part of Startorch Academy. And specifically for this character, we're like dealing in the present day with all of these problems in Wuthering Waves, right? World-ending threats. And yet there's like this faction, there's this side of the world that seems to be thinking about pretty much anything else. I think it's a little bit interesting, and I think it's really fascinating. And what I'll say overall is that when we talk about some of the other details later on, then some of the theories that I've had about 3.0, Fraidus, all of that, they'll start making a bit more sense. So that's the quote from Mornye over here. Now let's look at the archive and hear a bit about her as a person. Mornye is a Space Trek Collective researcher and a professor at Startorch Academy. Smart as a whip, but not very talkative. I think that was the main vibe that a lot of individuals got when they were looking at her when she was introduced back in the drip marketing over here. Not a lot of people thought she was a student. You know, she has a very like small stature and everything, but I was of the opinion that like her clothing, her elegancy, the hair, all of that, he really portrayed a bit more of like a, you know, older, more mature person. So that makes a lot of sense to me. That all checks out over there. And what I was talking about before, right, when it comes to the 3.0 cast of being a split between the professors and the students, we just had the drip marketing of Lahai, right? And it's confirmed that she is a preparatory student. And now we've got one of the professors. So all of that stuff appears to be true. I'm excited to see what the lineup is looking like for the rest of the playable cast. I've already got my money over here on professor, student, and maybe a bit of both. Maybe he's like the student council leader or something, but I could see him actually swinging either way. So with that in mind, we've already talked a little bit about the whole like professor stuff. We've already talked a little bit about like her personality and design and all of that. Now let's go ahead and see this second part over here. She is unwavering in the pursuit of her dream to surpass the limits of space, time, and see the world beyond in all of its splendid beauty. So this is kind of like a big thing that I talked about way back when I was talking about Wuthering Waves 3.0 in a previous video that I did before. One thing that I thought was very clear was the fact that Fraidus is kind of inherently linked to Lahai-Roi, because one of the big quotations from Schwarzlock, who's essentially the leader of Fraidus, the Grand Overseer, is the fact that he says this at the end of the 2.7 main quest. Next, it is time we turn our gaze to our accomplishments. To our accomplishments. Not what we're going to accomplish, but what we've already been successful with in Lahai-Roi. Doesn't it make quite a bit of sense that Fraidus has probably been involved with some of what's been going on at Startorch Academy? Maybe they're directly involved with the Space Trek Collective that we all know is kind of like front and center when it comes to advertising Startorch Academy or being a part of its marketing materials, because, well, they're the faction that's involved with the creation of this place. And this place is all about going to space. And one thing that we know for certain about Fraidus is that, let's just go ahead and take a look over here. The goal of Fraidus is essentially to create a stronger human race, right? To create individuals who will be able to take on threats beyond what exactly exists in the world right now. That's why Christopheros writing all of these crazy stories, right? And that's why Fraidus is constantly talking about, when you see over here, the goals that they've already completed. A Threnodian's Resonator. An Artificial Threnodian. Threnodian's Resonator is Cardathea. Artificial Threnodian is Mia. And then the second Resonance Awakening, that's Jinsei. And Fraidus had a role in making sure that all of these goals were actually accomplished, right? They were the prompt for all of these. They created the Artificial Threnodian in Mia. They captured Jue, did all the stuff to prompt the Mount Firmament arc, and then they were a pivotal role in making Renacida actually happen. And when you consider all of that, they now say that they possess both the means and the knowledge to now do other things. And so I imagine that what's going on at Startorch Academy, what's going on at 3.0, is going to actually be closely linked with the goals of Fraidus. And when you know that Fraidus is all about human experimentation, is all about furthering the potential of the race by doing and creating all of these different experiments, well, doesn't it make a lot of sense, or wouldn't it make a lot of sense, that Mornye, one of the people that we could say probably has some of the most artificial, experimental things about her, I'm talking about her goddamn legs, wouldn't it make a decent bit of sense that Mornye, as a member of the Space Trek Collective, that faction that created Startorch Academy, and the one that I'm saying has some links to Fraidus, wouldn't it make a good bit of sense that maybe she has some ties to what's going on over there? Because when you see those Fraidus dudes with like 3 arms, you know, like stuff like protruding out of them and stuff like that, and then you got Mornye over here who's missing the entire lower half of her body, it appears that the rest has been augmented. Well, I'm not really sure what's going on over here. Maybe she just got a disability, or maybe it's Maybelline. By that, I mean it's like scientific research and all about going. Okay, so the main point that I'm trying to focus on over here is that she's all about surpassing the limits of space, time, seeing the world beyond its beauty. That's what Fraidus is all about as well. They're all about surpassing the limits of what's already known. And one thing we know is that the goals of Fraidus and that the goals of Startorch Academy, they do kind of seem aligned. Because what do you need if you want to go to space? You need a high level of power to ensure your safety. Because what the hell is the point of being able to build all your spaceships and stuff and be able to go blast around if you just get murked by the first squad of aliens that you find? That's probably not what anyone actually wants. And that's actually why Startorch Academy has its own, and this is going to be a really, really interesting thing over here, its own tactical proving grounds, a fighting arena, a place where the Resonators that are accepted into this school can go off, have some battles, and improve their martial skills. Not really stuff that's in line with a pure research academy, which I'm pretty sure most people know Startorch Academy isn't just one of those. So that's just some of the stuff that we've been able to decipher from the archive that we're seeing over here. Now let's just actually start talking about Mornye's design itself. So I've already talked quite a bit about like the whole like elegant part, you know, like the whole coat, the dynamic that she has, obviously the lack of her legs and the kind of like cybernetic stuff that she has going on. And when you combine that with the fact that she's on the record, you know, doing all of this holographic stuff and has had like the planets and the orbits in the background, and then you see that echoed over here, I really do think that she is, in my opinion, probably going to be like the essence of Startorch Academy. Kind of like one of those individuals who's been, you know, very representative of why it was founded in the first place. You can tell from just everything about her that she screams like futuristic, you know, like next step of humanity, all of that, primarily due to the fact that 50% of her seems to not actually be human. And when you consider where we're heading when it comes to 3.0, the process of space travel, all of that, I feel like her significance is going to be pivotal, and she's probably one of the best characters to see, you know, the thinking process of when it comes to the direction that we're going to be going in 3.0. I think that she's like the iconic character from like the teaching staff, the professor side of the equation, to walk us through what's going on. And then we'll have, you know, obviously like the rebel, all of that with Linye over here. She's going to be like the rebellious, delinquent sort of individual that maybe takes us on a different side when it comes to approaching Startorch Academy. But when it comes to like that spread, you've got one of the most dedicated professors who's all about the actual purposes of the institution. And then you've got somebody over here who literally says, I think in their drip marketing, her dearest wish is for her trouble-free campus life to last forever. I think that's like a very, very complementary blend that Kuro Games has going on. They're polar opposites, and I hope we get to see in depth just how varied both sides of the equation are. So with that in mind, we've talked about her design, we've talked about the clothing, all of that. Now let's talk about like the planets and what's going on over here. So I think the planets and her focus on space in particular, they might actually have something to do with the attribute that she's going to represent. So I've been on the record saying that her color scheme really, really, really makes me think that she's going to be a glacial unit. Yes, I see the white hair, I see the red eyes, and you want to know the first thing I think of when I think of white hair and red eyes? I think of this 4-star unit. And guess what? She's a glacial character too. But that's probably too presumptuous. I don't want to go by color schemes because, well, whenever I make the argument of not going by color schemes, I just say that this unit exists because she's Electro, even though pretty much every single sign in the world is telling you that she's Fusion. So with that out of the way, I actually find it really interesting that this character has such a big focus on space, the limits, seeing the entire world. But one thing we also know about space is that it's essentially representative of a void, emptiness, a vast, deep pit. Some could even say it reminds them of the ocean. And one thing we know about the ocean, the depths, all of that in Wuthering Waves, is that that attribute is havoc. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, everything that's related to the waves, everything that's related to the deep, everything that's related to the unknown. That is essentially what the havoc attribute is in Wuthering Waves. And when you see that echoes like Lorelei are havoc and they're all about the water motif, and when you know that the empty ocean, the empty space, the emptiness of it, the fact that it's a vast void everywhere, that is very reminiscent of the ocean, I think there's actually a pretty decent chance that she could potentially be havoc as well. Because one thing that you know for certain is that she looks like she's, well, lost in space over here, gazing away, looking at the atmosphere, you know, the different I don't know the right scientific word to use for this, like the I'm just gonna stop. You get it. The orbits, all of that. And then in her actual marketing itself, right? The initial drip marketing, you see the same sort of patterns, the same orbits, the same planets, all of that. I think the vastness of space, the emptiness of it, that might actually be the core motif of her character. And what I've begun to realize in Wuthering Waves is that the attribute of a character is more closely aligned with their forte, their abilities, or essentially what the advertising says they're actually able to do. And to me, seeing her obsession with space, all of that, it makes sense to me that she might actually be havoc as well. And that might be a little bit presumptuous, but don't worry. There's a little bit of confirmation we'll be able to see over here. A little bit of confirmation. And that's going to be the second set of drip marketing that always comes along with the unit. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. But first, we got to take a look at what the actual words are to describe this. So, Mornye calls up screen after screen, immersed in a rigorous process of calculation, deduction, and calibration. Oh, very interesting. She's very... I mean, not really interesting, but we know she's scientific. She controls each mechanism with the same precision, as though she held the star-studded night sky in the palm of her hand. Okay, so that ending line to me, holding the star-studded night sky in the palm of her hand, that to me is like emphasizing control, emphasizing understanding, and the ability to hold the emptiness of the sky. I think that's further reinforcing some of the theories that I had before. The night sky is like the ocean. Empty, unknown, that's associated with havoc. And now that I see that this character is able to control whatever she's controlling, to be able to control that uncertainty to the point where she can comfortably hold it in her hand, most signs are pointing to havoc to me over here. The only thing that's still saying glacial to me is her hair color, but everything else when it comes to her character, everything else when it comes to her design and her motifs, They're all saying something else. And I've said the same exact thing before when it came to the drip marketing of Lahai, who we all know was right before Mornye, right? And one thing we all know about Lahai is the fact that this character is about light, right? They're all about colors. And when it comes to a radiant spectrum of colors taking shape, that's pretty much indicative of the fact that she's actually Spectro. And with what's going on over here, if this isn't Havoc, well, then I guess Kuro's got some explaining to do. Let's go ahead, and now let's take a look at this final ending trailer. It's all sky. It's all space. She is all about space. She's all about that empty void. Like I said before, guys, you can't count on color schemes. I already got betrayed by this unit, and the reason why she's Electro is because this shit is magnetic. Look. Look, it's magnetic. That's why, bro. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. And this is the character that's all about the literally space. Bro, she got like the Interstellar theme. She got like the Interstellar theme playing in the background. What the hell? It's great. I love it, and I'm gonna be real over here. I haven't really said what I feel about this unit. All I've really said is that her like legs are like kind of freaky. But I feel like she's going to be one of those characters that you really end up like, I don't want to say like caring for, but it's kind of like she's going to be, I feel like she's going to be one of those characters that ends up inspiring you as a player. It's just giving that vibe to me. Yeah. I really think that Kuro's gonna be able to do a lot with this unit. I really think that, like, the whole motif of space, the uncertainty that comes with space, but also, like, the potential, all of that, the wonders of the unknown. I am very interested in seeing where her story goes and what role she actually ends up playing in future patches when it comes to 3.0 and Startorch Academy. Because I feel like she could be, like I said before, right, one of the more interesting, inspiring units yet. Now, we've got our last bit of discussion over here, and that's going to be on her weapon. Guys, I have no idea. There hasn't really been anything shown at all. She got, like, weird legs. That's one thing that I can comfortably say about the entire 3.0 cast that Kuro Games has decided to show us. I've got no clue about their weapons. And I don't know if that's, like, a good or bad thing, but it is what it is. That's really it. It is what it is. And so we'll just have to see. I think tomorrow is when they're going to release some more official news regarding both of these units. But we'll just have to see until then. I've got nothing else to share. But yeah, very excited for what is coming forward for 3.0. Very excited for what's coming up with Lahai-Roi. I feel like these developers with these designs, they're multi-layered to me. There's a lot that's like under the surface that you got to do like an extra little bit of digging from some of the archives in the lore to like understand. But once you do, and when we know that Wuthering Waves has a good story, so you're going to find it out anyways, once you do, I feel like these units in this cast, they're really going to shine. So, yeah, very excited for what's ahead. Let me know what you all thought. Peace out, ladies and gentlemen.